like stream is working. Okay, everyone, thanks for joining me today. So I wanted to do a dashboard review. We've been getting a lot of requests for these, and I love the idea of going through dashboards and talking about what works and doesn't work. But I'm not comfortable doing it for somebody's dashboard that hasn't opted in to have their dashboard reviewed, and I haven't gotten any good submissions on the Discord yet from anyone. If y'all want to hop on the Discord, it's over on my profile link thing. Essentially what I'm going to do instead is give you an example using one of my own dashboards. This is one I did a while ago. This is just a fun little e-commerce or some type of commerce dashboard. Looks like Zoom's working. Good. I'm testing out some Zoom functions here. This was using some data that was coming from Microsoft. This was some sample data I believe they had. It is a breakdown of products sold in different categories and regions. It's just a good little bit of, businessy data to start with. And we built out a bunch of pivot tables and other stuff to process it. Let me zoom in so y'all can see everything better. I'll do that over here as well. I apologize for the weird layout here. I am using a gigantic screen for this and have to just do a little kind of weirdness to get it all laid out right. Okay, so hopping right into this. I know a lot about this dashboard because I built it. It was built primarily as a design example, not as a functional dashboard so much. And we'll talk about what areas make it not so functional of a dashboard. I'm just going to go section by section, and we'll try to cover kind of the main focal points and main areas I think there are for improvement. And I will have if I can do this, chat open. If anybody is on and wants to ask anything, feel free to drop it in the chat. I don't even know if I can see the chat, but hopefully I will be able to. Y'all know me. I'm kind of a boomer when it comes to streaming, but I'm doing my best. Okay, so hold on, moving back over. Let's do it. Okay, dashboards, reports, data visualization in general. Our goal is to communicate something and to tell a story. There is sometimes a misconception, especially around dashboards, that it's just to show lots of data so you can spot things happening here or there. That can be true in some very narrow situations. But typically, if your goal was to just know when something seems really far off, you typically want to just get a notification for that. You wouldn't really need a dashboard for it. If my sales drop well below the average, a notification goes off. That's going to work a little bit better than having a dashboard up on the wall. What dashboards are really good for and what reporting is really great for is starting to actually tell a little bit more of a story about how things work, or in some cases giving people a tool to dig into the data in a little bit more detail using an interface that they might be more comfortable with. And when I see a dashboard with all of this here, these types of filters and multi-layer filters to create a kind of dynamic dashboard like this, and let's just click so you can see what happens here. If we click on one, oh, come on, filter for me. There we go. Looks like we had a little lag there. Well, when I see this type of filtering, what I kind of assume and what I kind of know is going on here is we're trying to give people the ability to look at their data through different lenses and start to explore the narrative a little bit instead of just handing them the narrative. What we can do is put together context clues here to figure out what type of data we're looking at. So first things first, we see region is the highest level of filter we have here. So we know that we're looking at data broken down by different region and that we're letting people select different regions. So what does that mean? It's telling us a story about how performance is, or what performance is across different regions. I also noticed that I've got subcategories here. These subcategories look like different products, very specific types of products. So I also know that we might have different product mixes that people are looking at. Some people might want to see all products. Some people might want to see a specific product. A lot of times in organizations, you might have departments dedicated to specific projects. They want to be able to get an export of their performance and not have to see everybody else's at the same time. And that is what something like this would work really well for. Now, when we combine region with subcategory, it gets even more specific. Maybe we have a department handling chairs, furnishings, and phones that only operates in one of these regions. Oh, okay. I'll let you escape in just a sec, buddy. Sorry, my cat wants to get away here, I think. Can you hold on for just a sec? Okay. All right. So that's kind of the context clues we have here. We know that the goal is not one super rigid narrative. It is letting people have a little bit of hands-on exploration ability. And that's really good to know as we analyze the dashboard itself. So when we start looking at what is on this actual dashboard, I'm starting to first start with the upper left-hand corner. Now, this is going to depend a little bit on where you're from. If you're from somewhere where they read right to left, you might look at upper right hand instead of upper left hand. But essentially, our eyes tend to be drawn into the upper left-hand corner first if you're from a country that reads from left to right. And that tends to be the main focal point or an area that is going to give you context. So if we're kind of looking in the upper left zone here, and I'll zoom in a little so we just are all looking at the same thing. If we're looking at the upper left zone here, I'm seeing our nav. This is cool, and if anybody doesn't know, you can hyperlink in Excel to different sheets. That's great. I'm seeing our controls. This is contextual information. That's important. I want to know the time period I'm looking at. I want to know all these other filter selections. But then really, our hero metric here, big font, different color, and in the upper left-hand corner are all things that emphasize this section. So this is the first place somebody's eyes are going to be drawn to. This is telling us sales and profit, broken down by a few different categories here. Now, nothing wrong with this other than this double donut chart. The moment I posted this the first time years ago, got a lot of very mean comments about the double donut chart. I'm a big proponent of the double donut chart, but people often don't understand what it is and what role it plays. In this case, our double donut is letting us look at two different metrics, in this case sales on the inner ring, profit on the outer ring, and it helps us see the ratio of that broken down by a few different categories, in this case consumer, corporate, and home office. What this does not do is help us actually see the whole values in each of these categories, and what this also does not do is label those sections. So right now, all we're really getting is a sense of how the ratio of all of these categories compares in sales versus profit. That's limited insight. If we added in some labels here, this could be a little bit more useful. We'd have more specific numbers to look at that we could use to interpret what's here. So the one thing I really think this needs is it needs labels. And, oh, hold on, let me drop my cat down. He's ready to go. Hold on, everyone. Okay, Gummy, wait first. Okay, I know. Say hi to everyone, you little monster. There you go. You little grumbly boy. Okay. And I think we might also need to think about whether or not the ratio of these three things, consumer, corporate, and home office, matters versus the total. Meaning if we wanted to actually show how much bigger each is than another, we would need to use a bar chart for this. Just things to think about. I don't tend to pass judgment on these types of things until I know what the creator of the report actually intended to use it for, right? So it's easy to look at this and say, oh, double donut charts, they're bad. You should just use bar charts. They're better. It's not that simple. That is not how things work in this space. And if you think about things in that simplistic manner, you're never going to be a truly excellent data analyst, data communicator. Really, you're just not going to be able to do your job as well as you potentially could. You have to understand what it's actually trying to communicate and why first, and start there. So if the goal was to show the ratio, it's doing that great. But if the goal was to actually show the total values, it's not doing that job great. And that's the lens we have to look at when we look at all of these. Next thing I'm seeing here, and I'm guessing, is that our audience is going to go from left to right across. Now, this isn't always true. Again, kind of depends on the culture you're in, the direction that people tend to read in. But in my experience, this is typically where people go next. So we've got a sales history chart here. Now, the glaring obvious issue here is that this chart doesn't have labels. It probably should have labels. It has axis labels here. That is helpful, but it doesn't have labels for the individual data points. There's plenty of room to add those labels. So if I was doing this report again, I would add them in. I do suggest that you always remember that people can hover over points on a chart and actually see the values. You notice how this little window's opened up showing me what's there. So you can keep that in mind. You don't always have to thoroughly label everything the way that people like to imply. It is good to label. In general, you should opt towards labeling versus not labeling, but you don't, it's people imply that you have to always have it. That's not always true. But in this case, we should. This does need labels. And more importantly, the label that's far more important than the individual data points is the actual x-axis here. So we don't know what the time period is. And without the time period, this is not super useful. I will, in future versions of charts like this, have a better way of handling these so it's easier to add labels. I believe labels were skipped here because we actually have two charts plotted, one over the other. Let's see if I can adjust that so you can see it. Let me grab one, move it. That was the reason. And we have better ways of handling that now, so it's not really necessary anymore, but just good to know. So labels are important, and it's one of the first things to consider when you are reviewing your own dashboards. One other quick one here. This is up at the top to the right. I do think because this has a different color background and is a geo chart, it's going to draw people's attention. In this case, I actually like this geo chart. And look, geo charts are contentious, and this is a map. You could just call it a map. I get people give me a hard time about that one too sometimes. But essentially, what this is doing is breaking down all of the sales or profit data we have in a particular region, in this case sales. The thing you need to know about geo charts, and I'm going to zoom in here just so we have the right focal point in the background as we discuss this. The thing you need to know about geo charts is that they are not super effective data visualizations, in the sense that our brain is not very good at looking at this and telling the difference between California versus Nevada or Washington. Using a color gradient like this to determine differences in values is just not something our brains are good at interpreting. You could label it, but it's hard to cram tons of labels into geo charts like this. It just doesn't work very well. So what is this chart actually doing? What purpose does it serve? The purpose it serves is telling us what region we're looking at. I can very quickly look at this and tell that we're looking at the Western region. The area that's highlighted in a particular color is the Western region, so it gives me context. We are essentially literally using this as a map to tell us where we are, not necessarily using it as a data viz to compare different regions together. It's important to keep in mind. The other thing that is super important to know about geocharts, and I have tested this extensively, people just like them, and they use them a lot. They aren't effective necessarily in a lot of ways, but people love them. And because of that, I will include geocharts in dashboards simply because it increases engagement and users just enjoy them. I've tested side-by-side A/B testing, identical dashboards, one with a geochart, one without a geochart. The geochart consistently gets used more, not the geochart itself, but the dashboard with the geochart. Because people just love they love the look, they love the vibe of it, it just works. So keep that in mind if you're going to be using them yourself. Don't rely too heavily on them for insights about which region has the most activity or profit or sales or whatever, but use them as a map to give people a sense of where they are and what they're looking at, and you're going to be using them as effectively as you can. Okay, so the next section here is profit history. This is a profit loss chart. There's a trick for doing this if you're wondering how to do this yourself in Excel. Hey, my cat's meowing. I'm sure y'all can hear that. We have one set of data that is only positive values, one set of data that is only negative values, and that allows us to format them differently. What I would say about this, useful. Could use labels. I don't know if labels are necessarily a requirement in this case because we do have grid lines and axis labels, but it's showing a very, very broad time period. That time period doesn't necessarily match with everything else on the dashboard, and that's just something to consider. This is showing 2014 through 2016, it looks like. And if that is a longer time period than we use everywhere else, that might be confusing. So you would need to make that a little clearer probably in this case. Otherwise, a fine chart. I'm not sure about functional insights here necessarily. I gotta grab my cat. He hopped on my table and is getting into my grocery. Be a good boy, not a bad boy. Don't do crimes. You're always doing crimes, sir. You're always doing crimes. All right, he's back. Okay. Hey, no. If you're gonna go do crimes, I can't let you run off like that, okay? Okay, so I don't necessarily have an issue with this overall. The thing we need to really think about here is that we have a sales history and profit history plotted out here, and we have to think about how useful that insight actually is for our users. What kind of decisions are they going to be able to make off of it? Is it actually valuable? Is it actionable in any way? And the answer is no if we were only looking at it through the lens of one particular filter. But where these could become useful is when we're starting to compare, say, one region to another region or one grouping of products to another grouping of products. You could quickly switch between these and start to notice things like, hey, our profit and sales history of these two different products or in these two different regions are very different, and start to maybe develop some useful insights there. That level of data exploration is fraught. So I just want to reiterate here that kind of my top level critique of this dashboard, and again, I'm the one who built this, so I'm critiquing myself here, is that giving people a level of data exploration to do on their own is something you have to think really hard about, because most people are not trained properly to do their own data analysis like that. And it could be very easy for somebody clicking around here, checking out regions and categories, to not really understand the underlying data and make assumptions based off of these insights and these charts that could actually be harmful to the organization as a whole. And that comes up a lot. People make bad assumptions based off of data if they don't fully understand that data sometimes. So I would keep that in mind here. Look, in this example, I'm assuming this is being used by somebody who is responsible enough to get those insights themselves, but you should think about that for your own audience as well. So next is this bottom, I would call this a row of cards we have here. So let me, hold on. My cat is being a little naughty. Let me go like this. So if you notice, this bottom row is all related stuff. So this first chart on the left is each category: technology, office supplies, and furniture, with a sales and profit comparison chart. This is just a overlapping bar chart. And then a breakdown of each of those three categories. So technology, products, office supplies, and furniture, broken down with product sales on top, and then sales versus profit over time on the bottom. Now, there's a lot here. I think we would probably also want to add, if we're going to show total sales, also total profit as well. And more importantly, I think that this chart down here really needs to have x-axis labels to show the date that we're looking at, because without having the context of this date range, it's not actually super useful to us. With all of that said, what I like about this, and what I was thinking when I initially built this so long ago as a design exercise, is that combining charts together in groupings that are related to each other is how you really start to tell a story. And that's what I was trying to illustrate here. Is first we have this bar chart here. This bar chart breaks down the categories, gives us the totals, lets us compare the performance across these three different categories: technology, office supplies, and furniture. That's great, but the first question somebody's going to ask when they see this is, hey, office supplies has a lot more sales, not a lot more profit. That's interesting. I want to see how that breaks down over this year, last year, this quarter, previous quarter, this month, last month, whatever. So I can look at that, and then immediately where my eye naturally goes is to the right, I can start to see the breakdown and get the answer to that question I asked. This is like an exercise I try to teach people about quite a bit, which is anticipating the question. You should always ask yourself, what is the first question my audience is going to ask? Can I answer that question in my dashboard? It's a very useful exercise. It can save you a lot of time, a lot of frustration, and prevent you from having to rebuild things that you might otherwise need to rebuild. So, having groupings like this I like, There is a need for labels on all of our charts here for the time series, and we probably want to add in the other metric here, sales and profit. We're just showing sales. I think we could add both here without it really causing an issue. We've got plenty of real estate left here to add it. So those are my big insights and my overall sort of first things I jump to when I see a dashboard like this. I would say that if I found out somebody was using this dashboard to tell a really specific story, hey, I'm trying to tell a story about how sales and profit is working across these categories and how we need to focus on this opportunity here, I would probably say this isn't a good dashboard for that. It's not specific enough. It doesn't have enough context added. It is more exploratory than storytelling. But if the goal was to give people a tool to quickly report on different regions and be able to get insights and compare those regions, then I would say it does serve its purpose pretty well. It's doing a decent job of it. It just might not be giving the depth of insights we would need to be truly actionable. Now, the goal of this wasn't to do that, but this could be the signal somebody has to then dive into, say, understanding why office supplies is always having such high sales and relatively low profit across a few other categories. I think we saw that earlier. Of course, now I'm clicking at the categories and that's not true. Or it might be the thing that gives us the signal to say like, hey, we really need to focus on this region. There's something here, and dig deeper into the data to get those insights. The nice thing about this too in Excel, and this is kind of an Excel specific feature, I would say, is that the dashboard itself is awesome. And if somebody really wants to do the deep diving, we in theory could set this up so the pivot tables allow them to do a bit of that deep diving themselves. If they're proficient with that sort of thing, if they want to do that level of analysis, we could sort of simplify that process for them, or we could even do the same thing with the raw data itself. You know, the joke is no matter how good of a dashboard you build, no matter how good of a reporting tool you build, the first thing people will ask for is, hey, can I just get a copy of the table, right? Can I get a CSV of the table or whatever? And the fact is that we provide it right here, and we give people the ability to dig into this. And if they really wanted to, they could even dive into this, start filtering things, start getting whatever level of insight they wanted, and do their own deeper analysis if they wanted to. So we are kind of giving the option to, in appropriate circumstances, enable somebody to dig a lot deeper and get those insights. Look, there are very, very different sort of philosophies around this stuff when it comes to building dashboards. And there are people out there who would say that this is a complete waste. I don't agree with that. I think that's a little narrow-minded. But what I will say is that typically, in most projects, you're much better off trying to answer very, very specific questions, not going broad. This is a dashboard that goes broad. That's just the nature of the sample data we had. And frankly, it was a design example. So we were focused on design over super, super deep dives into answering specific actionable questions. But as a general principle, if you're building your own reports, I highly suggest that you emphasize specific questions, you dive deep into specific questions, and you make sure that they're questions that, when answered, can steer decision making and be truly actionable. Stuff that you can actually do something with. That is going to serve you better in most cases. So the temptation is to go broad. The temptation is to include every bit of data from every different category, from every different angle. That is often too much. And it's putting the responsibility of doing the exploratory work on the person who is looking at the dashboard. You should be doing the exploratory work yourself in most cases. In fact, in all cases. And if you are doing that exploratory work, you're probably better off telling a very specific story about that and supporting it as best you can with the data available to you, as opposed to going broad. Just my 2 cents. I know we have a question in the chat. Unfortunately, I can't see it. Let's see if I can get over here and open it. No. Do I do it this way? No. Live chat. Oh, thank you for the appreciation from Poland, whoever sent that. I very much appreciate you. So I hope this was useful and insightful. A couple of requests. If you have thoughts about how we did this analysis, what you liked, what you didn't like, the types of reports you'd like to see, anything like that, please, please, please let me know. This was just a little test run I'm doing with one of my own dashboards as an example, but I'd love to do this with other dashboards too. So if you also have your own reports that you'd like reviewed, you can hop on the Discord and put them in there. Don't put anything confidential in there, obviously, but I'd be more than happy to give constructive, positive feedback as much as I can. If you have other things you'd like me to dig into, I'd love to hear about that as well. I'm very open to exploring new content types for all of this. And if you're somebody who is interested in getting a copy of this or any of the other things you see in my videos, if you want to find the Patreon, the Discord, all that kind of stuff, it's all over on my profile. I've linked to all of it, and you can get all of it there. So I think that's it for now. This was a fun, short stream, but I think it was a really good test of doing a review of a dashboard and focusing on useful insights. Please, please, please give your feedback. It's always very much appreciated. I see some stuff in the chat here. Dan, thank you so much for watching. And Alexis, organizational improvement. That's a good one. Let YouTube send a notification half an hour a day before you stream. Oh, interesting. Okay, got it. I will try to set this up so it's scheduled so people get notifications next time. Thank you so much for that, Alexis. And yeah, I am just sending appreciation to everybody out there. If you happen to watch, it was great having you. I'm going to be probably doing longer streams in the future, and maybe changing up the format. Again, you all know me. I'm figuring all this out. I don't really know how it works yet, so bear with me. Thank you for tuning in. Have a lovely time wherever you are in the world. Bye for now, folks. See ya.